Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I'm happy to chat with you today about your film Hidden Letters, which I am so happy to to see it doing so well on the festival circuit. Congratulations on the two most recent award at Heartland Film Festival and Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival. Um, so I'm curious about certain aspects of the filmmaking process. I'm just remembering the first version of the film that I saw. I was so impressed about how you pull all the different elements together for the final film. Uh, you were inspired to tell the story of these women, and you were able to do it in a way that's nuanced, that's gentle, that's beautiful, and that's to me both appropriate for the domestic Chinese audience, to inspire the women there, but also for the international audience to understand the culture and especially the history of womanhood in China. That's really hard to do. Having worked on stories in China, I think that the challenge that we always face is how do we take these Chinese stories with its historical and political complications and be able to, you know, put together something that's both appropriate for the domestic audience and the international audience. So can you share a little bit about how you were able to do that?
I mean, you and I worked for so many years together, and then you also know this. I think, what I was able to put together with this film probably says more about like how much I've been producing for so long for Chinese stories, and then the challenges and difficulties I know of making film, particularly about China. I mean, you and I met, I don't know how many years ago, like it's been so long, but I think I first moved back to China in 2010. And that was the time I started to really realize that we really have no resources. We have nothing. We have not even like a distribution market, like filmmakers has nothing to rely on. So a lot of times that they have to rely on, resources from, Western countries. And in a way, subtly, I start to see that people sometimes have to feed into the Western narrative in order to make their film be seen, because I mean, you can be seen in China anyways. And I think that's like, it's sad in a way, but also I find it also a bit problematic. And so I actually, I know stubbornly, I think not many people believe that, but to me, it's really important that I find a way that my story and my perspective need to be embraced and seen in China as well. Because if my community doesn't hold me accountable, I can just say whatever I want, and it may not even be true. So I want that to hold myself accountable. And that from that on, I also stubbornly believe that, the film that I want to tell need to target on both markets, that it need to be seen in China. It should also be embraced in Western world. And that's like really, really hard.
Well,
So
yeah, tell me what are the challenges? Like what is this, I mean, maybe that's not just the one narrative in the West has about China, but like what are some of the examples of sort of a certain trajectory that the West wants to see in stories from China that you find challenging and maybe in some ways inaccurate?
I think first of all that it's very easy to scapegoat China for every social issue um with the government, like it's the government's fault. So like if you do anything that's social issue related, it's very easy that you go into that direction. And to me that, I think yes, but also, as a Chinese native growing up in China, we're dealing with a very complex cultural, politics, economic system, and also like human nature. I think it's very complex. And so that's why to me that I think trying to, intentionally not to go to a convenient route to tell a story that just, easily to say that, oh, this is the fault of that, and intentionally trying to bring different layers um and elements to make the film to be more layered, and in that way to provide a different kind of perspective that people not usually see. And that's actually what I feel passionate about, like I think even in the Chinese society, like if we're talking about a topic, because there's not that much voices that you can hear in the mainstream media in China. So how do we find a perspective that can be held accountable, but also kind of complement or help to kind of debunk the existing narrative?
Well, okay, so for instance, what do you think that, telling the story like Hidden Letters about these two women, about kind of their struggle in this, very traditional patriarchal society that still exerts a lot of that pressure on women today, what would have been the Western narrative? Like, what would have been the Western stereotypical expectation that you would?
I think it would be just like, like China has always been very, like patriarchal society. And part of it is because of our cultural system, but also part of it is that our power system is very patriarchal, and it's very easy to simplify that as a problem. But actually being as a Chinese, that when I grew up in a more so communist kind of era, when actually gender equality was very much pushed, and I benefited from that. My mom benefited from that as the first generation medical staff in the family. My father really pushed me to dream as higher. I was always like achieving, in schools, in, like different kind of realm when I grew up. And I never felt that I should be trapped with my gender roles. And like when 2010, when I moved back to China, I started to think about the relationship between capitalism and how that affects gender equality. And I think there is a huge actually relationship in that. And that's more complex than just, this is a patriarchal society.
Sure.
And how do I incorporate that into it? And also, there's also the thousands of years of culture and traditions that play in the role. And that's like, many people actually came to me, it's like, oh, we're actually really shocked and surprised that women, we thought that Chinese women are so ahead. They're all, projecting themselves as so powerful and successful. But hello, we actually have all these engraved legacy that's on me. Me, myself, like I actually went to Berkeley for graduate school, and I thought that, oh, that's a place that I can find my husband, that I'll be a perfect mom. And, like I kind of give up 2
Which
years.
is the cultural expectation, right?
Exactly. And I thought that I'm such a good mom material, and I will be the best mom and all that. But it was really until that I start my motherhood, and that completely changed my way of thinking, that actually there's a lot of injustice in it. And why is that something that I've never thought about? And then now after that, I start to push myself, how much of the narrative that we should actually restructure about gender equality, how much should I unroot myself to, go back to think like whatever way that I see myself as a woman is wrong. Like it there's so many conversations that I would start to have with myself, and how much is okay of men's reaction to women is right, and how much of that is wrong. So I just decided to all show it on the film, and then, like let people to also reflect on themselves as well.
Well, so I think that the other question to what we've been talking about, about the sort of the Western pressure is, then what are the Chinese domestic pressure that you experience when you try to tell a story like this? I mean, you're talking a little bit about the cultural, the historical pressure, but like, what are the logistical, I mean, the fact is, it is very challenging in terms of resources, in terms of the certain, stories and certain themes are not supported or suppressed, right? So how do you navigate about that?
I think the most challenging thing is to protect our subjects, and then dealing with subjects in China is a whole different game than dealing with subjects out of China, because they could lose their job, they could lose their freedom, they could lose so many things. Their risk is so much higher. So how do we protect them very much affects the way that I tell the story, what kind of approach that I tell the story. So that, I mean, throughout the years of me producing for many Chinese films, that, like it's not by choice, but at the end of the day, it's sort of like we chose to tell a subtle and nuanced ways, so it's not like, like there's a lot of things that I didn't, include in a film of what my characters, scenes are, very much because of that. And also I think that defines my way of storytelling, that how do I embed a radical perspective, a nuanced and subtle way of storytelling, but in a way that in the end, like after so many years, I realized it's actually more powerful, and I embrace that as part of me now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, a Western perspective would say that, well, that's censorship, or that's,
It
that's,
is self-censored, but it's
yeah.
kind of like you have to do that because, I mean, if you don't do that, then film won't be seen in China, and then it won't make a change. And like at the end of the day, we all make film to make a change. And like, please remember me that I produced, in 2013, that the film, we created policy change in China, and we deliberately chose to tell a love story about Alzheimer's patient instead of criticizing what the system is like. And then that did create policy change. And that's, to me, is really, really powerful. And because we find a way for the film to be seen and discussed and make an impact.
I do feel like that, this particular point that you're talking about is something that doesn't get discussed enough. I think that we see in the documentary field, in the sort of a stereotypical Western documentary audience, that they just want to they want to get worked up, they want to get angry and passionate about something, but they not sure that they really spend, or I mean, it's not fair to say everybody, but I'm not sure that the majority of them really spend time thinking about, well, how is this actually gonna make change in the place that needs the change, that needs to see this story, that needs to be exposed, into be introduced to these issues. So
yeah, the parallel of that dilemma that I'm dealing with is very much the legacy of what these women in Yushu has created. They were not trying to throw away the system in a really protesting way, but they found a way to communicate, and be vulnerable, and to find a way to, like, rebuild power from within. And in the end, they also, make changes because of the sisterhood they created. And then that inspired me so much. And I think, it's also go along with, the approach and what we were talking about, that how, we made this film. Yeah, I think that, it's also thanks to the courage and then the legacy that these women, and wisdom, these women passed down to me, and, the emotional profoundness of they created. And I hope that even though, with the nuanced and subtle approach that I'm making this film, that it can resonate with people with the same kind of emotional profoundness.
Well, I mean, what do you think the documentary community at large, both the makers and the audience, like what do you think folks should be doing or can be doing to kind of encourage, sort of more, I mean, I don't know, necessarily more subtle filmmaking, but the kind of filmmaking, the kind of storytelling that will, have impact, both, specifically for China, both domestically and internationally? What are the things that we should be encouraging, or what are the kind of support that we should be offering?
I think that because you and I make the same kind of films, so I'm sure that you're thinking along those lines too. I think that, we have proven again that we don't lack audience. It's not a problem that we reach audience. Hidden Letters has got so many great reviews, and every time I do screenings, people cry. I don't think it's a problem of we can't reach audience, or audience don't respond to this type of storytelling. I think it's what's in the middle of what gatekeepers is willing to take risk or not. I think that's the main problem. I think that for them, it's very easy to program films that's very much in the mainstream media of how they portray China. And then those films get to be celebrated more, and those films, that's what they like more. But if they are willing to take more risk, I think it's also our responsibility to, kind of push that a little bit more, and then just take the risk, and then they will see actually that audience respond to these kind of films.
Yeah, I think that a variety of storytelling methods, right, instead of just
Absolutely.
sort of like a monotony and like a monopoly of a certain type of storytelling methods are encouraged, but not others. So, well,
This is great. I
yeah, it's
really enjoyed
been,
talking to you.
yeah,
Like
great to
every
have a
time.
short chat. Yeah. So, and tell us what's next for Hidden Letters.
I'm actually going to Norway for Bergen Film Festival, and that's we're going to premiere in Norway. And then we're actually going to have theatrical release in early December, that started from New York at Landmark, and it will be PBS on Independent Lens next year in May. So hopefully we'll keep pushing the film, and keep pushing for more people to see the film.
Thanks, Violet. This is
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Leo.